The 13-year-old girl expelled from her home for becoming pregnant returns years later and surprises everyone. Hello everyone, enjoy these moments of relaxation while watching. Don't you have anything else to say? Emily, the voice of David resonated like thunder in the already stifling house. Emily shrank back, unable to look directly at her father. The 13-year-old girl could only lower her head, her trembling hands clutching the edge of her shirt. What a disgrace, Laura, Emily's mother, added, in a phrase filled with venom, looking at her without a shred of compassion. Pregnant at your age. My God, why did I have to give birth to a daughter like this? I didn't do it on purpose, Emily stammered, tears flowing uncontrollably. You didn't do it on purpose? David slammed the table with such force that the whole room shook. You know you have dishonored this entire family. What do you think people will say? How do you plan to keep living in this town? Laura let out a sarcastic laugh. David, why bother talking to her? A girl like that doesn't deserve to be here. Let her deal with the consequences on her own. No, Mom, please. Emily looked up, her eyes red from crying, but she only received a cold, icy stare. What are you doing there on your knees? Get out of this house. David stood up abruptly, pointing at the door. It was as if Emily's world had crumbled at her feet. She took a few steps back, her eyes wide with fear. I have nowhere to go. I don't know what to do. That's not our problem. Don't come back here. David turned his back as if Emily were a stranger. You're right. Keeping her here only stains the family name, Laura said calmly but with contempt. Outside, the neighbors began to gather, peering curiously toward the house. Their inquisitive looks and murmurs started to fill the air. Emily felt as if each stare was a dagger piercing her back. Go on! David shouted impatiently. Emily ran out, tears streaming down her cheeks. The rain began to fall, heavy and cold. She wandered along the dark road, her small feet covered in mud and numb from the cold. Get lost! You don't belong here, shouted a middle-aged man with a harsh face, blocking the entrance to an abandoned house where Emily sought refuge. I just want to stay one night, Emily pleaded, her voice choked with tears. Out! I don't want trouble, said the man, slamming the door in her face, leaving Emily alone in the rain. Emily kept walking until she reached a nearby park, where the cold stone benches were her only refuge. Night fell quickly, and Emily curled up on a bench, holding her belly as though she wanted to protect the tiny hope growing inside her. Hey, girl, stop, a rough voice broke the silence, followed by unpleasant laughter. Emily turned and saw three figures emerging from the shadows with threatening looks. What are you doing out here alone at this hour? We need some fun, and you seem perfect, said one of them, approaching with a malicious grin. Emily didn't respond, she only backed away slowly. Don't run. Where do you think you're going? Emily ran, tears blending with the rain that blurred her vision. Her heart pounded fiercely, and her feet slipped on the wet ground. But her survival instinct kept her from stopping. The men's footsteps sounded closer and closer, but fortunately, Emily managed to slip into a narrow alley and lose them. She collapsed to the ground, trembling with fear and exhaustion. Why? Why does everyone hate me? Emily whispered, her voice drowned out by the sound of the rain. That night, Emily curled up under a tree in the park. The rain didn't let up, and the cold penetrated her to the bone. She didn't know when she fell asleep. In her dreams appeared images of her parents, but there was no love in them anymore, only reproach and coldness. Emily, you deserve this. Laura's voice thundered, startling her awake. Emily opened her eyes, her body was numb from the cold, and a high fever made her head spin. Her lips were pale. I'm going to die here, that thought crossed her mind, filling her with fear. Outside, the rain kept pouring, but Emily had no strength left to fight. Everything around her began to fade. "Girl, what are you doing here?" An elderly but warm voice broke the silence. Emily weakly made out the figure of an older woman leaning toward her, holding a large umbrella to shield them from the rain. Emily could no longer speak, letting herself collapse into the stranger's arms. "Don't be afraid, child, I'll help you," said Helen gently, her trembling hands lifting Emily. "Who are you?" Emily murmured, her eyes closing from exhaustion. "I'm just an old baker, but you can't stay here," replied Helen. Amid the torrential rain, Helen took Emily to her small bakery on the corner of the street. The house was modest but welcoming, with the sweet aroma of freshly baked bread filling the air, in stark contrast to the cold outside. "Sit here. I'll bring you some hot tea." Helen settled Emily in a chair, looking at her with compassion as the girl shivered in her soaked clothes. For the first time in days of horror, Emily felt a bit of warmth, thanks to a stranger's kindness. But inside, the pain and wounds still lay open, as if they had never healed. The next morning, Emily woke up in a worn wooden chair inside Helen's bakery. She still felt weak from the fever the day before. The aroma of freshly baked bread surrounded her, and her empty stomach rumbled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten in 2 days. "You're awake. Here, drink some hot milk." Helen gently placed a glass of milk and a small piece of bread on the table. Her gaze was full of concern as she watched the thin girl with a pale face. Thank you," Emily said weakly, though distrust remained visible in her eyes. She wasn't used to kindness, especially not from someone she didn't know. "Don't worry, I don't need to know what happened, but it's clear you need help," Helen said in a calm yet warm voice. "Eat and then rest a bit more. We'll talk later." Emily took the bread with trembling hands, hungry and exhausted, but when she brought it to her lips, a lump in her throat kept her from taking a bite. The cruel words of her parents still echoed in her mind. She set the bread back on the table, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. "What's wrong, child?" Helen asked, sitting beside her. "I don't deserve to eat. I'm the shame of my family," Emily sobbed. Helen remained silent for a moment, then took Emily's thin hands in her own. "Listen, little one, nobody deserves to be treated like that. I don't know what happened, but I know you're a good girl, and you deserve to live." With Helen's help, Emily began helping in the little bakery. Although the work wasn't too heavy, the inquisitive looks from neighborhood customers continued to make her nervous. "Who is that girl?" a customer murmured to Helen, eyes filled with suspicion. "She doesn't seem trustworthy. Don't let her ruin your reputation." Helen firmly rejected the comment. "What I do is no one's business. If you don't like it, find another bakery." But not everyone was like Helen. One afternoon, while Emily cleaned the tables in the bakery, a man in a heavy coat came in. It was Matthew, the owner of the nearby grocery store, known for his stinginess and for getting into everyone's business. "Helen, I need to talk to you," Matthew said, looking at Emily with obvious displeasure. "What's it about, Matthew?" Helen asked. "That girl," he pointed directly at Emily, "do you know who she is? I heard they kicked her out of her house for doing something shameful. Having her here will only bring you trouble." Emily lowered her head, trying to hold back tears, but Matthew's words hit her like knives in the heart. Helen straightened up with a cold, determined look. "Matthew, if you don't have anything more useful to say, I ask you to leave. This girl isn't hurting anyone. But you should worry about your reputation. Who would buy bread from a place that shelters someone like her?" Matthew added in a disparaging tone. "Get out of here, Matthew, and don't come back," Helen said, pointing to the door, her gaze firm, determined not to let anyone hurt Emily further. Nevertheless, rumors began spreading through the neighborhood. "The pregnant girl is living in Helen's bakery." The whispers and contemptuous looks grew harder to ignore. One night, while Emily was taking out the trash, a group of neighborhood youths surrounded her. "Hey, you! "Who do you think you are to live here?" said a young man named Ethan, wearing an intimidating expression. "I just want to live in peace," Emily replied, stepping back, her voice trembling. "In peace? Someone like you? You've already shamed this place," Ethan growled, shoving her roughly to the ground. "Enough!" Helen's voice rang out from the bakery's entrance. She ran toward Emily, helping her up. "If you can't behave, never come back here again." Ethan let out a mocking smile. "Fine, but don't complain when we boycott your bakery." Helen led Emily inside, her hands shaking with anger. "Don't pay attention to them. You haven't done anything wrong." But Emily stayed silent, tears streaming down her face. She didn't know how much more pressure she could take. The tension grew so intense that Helen had to close the bakery for a few days to avoid unnecessary trouble. During that time, Emily tried to find work to help Helen, but nobody wanted to hire her. "We don't need more staff," said a restaurant owner, giving her a look of disdain because of her belly. "Please, give me a chance." "I'll work hard," Emily begged, but received only head shakes and refusal. From one place to another, Emily began to feel like a shadow, rejected by everyone. One afternoon, returning to the bakery, she found Helen sitting next to a stack of bills. "Are you all right?" Emily asked, worried. Helen sighed. "I don't know if I can keep this bakery. People threaten to stop buying if you stay here." "I'll leave," Emily said, her voice trembling. "I don't want you to suffer because of me." Helen looked at Emily with eyes full of pain. "What a silly girl. You have nowhere to go, and I won't let you go back to the street." But inside Emily, the idea of leaving grew. She didn't want Helen to keep suffering because of her. Emily woke up after a sleepless night, watching Helen still working despite her advanced age. Although she felt immense gratitude, she couldn't avoid the guilt that consumed her. She knew her presence only added burden to the woman. "I'm going to look for work." "I don't want you to keep feeling pressured," Emily said softly as Helen prepared dough that morning. "I've already told you, Emily, you don't need to worry about me. This is your home, and you're not going anywhere," Helen replied firmly, though her voice betrayed her fatigue. Still, Emily was determined. She left the bakery that day, visiting the neighborhood shops in search of employment. Her heart sank at every critical look and rejection she faced. "You're looking for work?" "How funny," said a woman named Diana, the owner of a sewing shop, when Emily entered. "We don't hire people like you. Better get out before you dirty my shop." Emily bit her lip, holding back tears, silently thanked her, and left. Each step grew heavier, feeling ever more rejected by the world. That afternoon, while Emily was handing out flyers for a few coins, she heard shouting in the nearby market. "She stole my wallet. That pregnant girl, it's her." An older woman, her face red with anger, pointed directly at Emily. A crowd began to gather, eyes full of curiosity and judgment. "No, I didn't do anything. I didn't steal anything." Emily cried, tears in her eyes. She backed away a few steps, but two men from the crowd blocked her path. "Search her bag," one of them suggested in a threatening tone. "No, please, don't do that." Emily tried to protect her bag, but being weaker, a man snatched it from her. They searched Emily's bag but found nothing. The woman who had accused her seemed uneasy, trying to justify herself. "Surely she hid it somewhere else, but someone like her definitely isn't trustworthy." Emily stood still, trembling with rage and fear. The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement with the woman. "Get out before I call the police," the woman shouted, pointing at Emily. Emily ran away, tears streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't understand why people could be so cruel just because she was different, because she carried a life inside her. The world seemed determined to trample her. When she reached the bakery, Helen was waiting for her with a worried expression. "What's wrong?" Why are you crying? Emily couldn't hold it in any longer. She broke down, sobbing inconsolably in Helen's arms. I didn't do anything wrong, but they hate me. They treat me like garbage. I can't stand it anymore. Helen gently stroked Emily's hair, trying to comfort her. Silly girl, you have to be strong. Don't let those people break you. But Emily only shook her head, with pain and despair firmly rooted in her heart. The next day, Helen had to leave the bakery to talk to the owner about overdue rent. Emily stayed behind, trying to work, but she couldn't stop worrying. She was haunted by Ethan's threats and those of the local youths. Sure enough, Ethan and two of his friends came in, defiant expressions on their faces. Hey, girl, how's business today? Ethan said mockingly. What do you want? Emily tried to stay calm. What do we want? We just came to see how you're doing. We heard old lady Helen isn't here, so you're alone, right? Ethan wore a malicious smile, his eyes revealing bad intentions. Please, leave. This isn't a place to cause trouble, Emily replied, her voice trembling. Trouble? We just want to help you, but with that attitude, it seems you don't need our help. He approached Emily with a mean look. Tell me, do you think that baby in your belly will have a good life? Terrified, Emily backed away instinctively, placing her hands over her abdomen to protect her baby. Leave. I'm going to call the police. Oh, do it, Ethan replied defiantly. But who do you think will believe you? A girl like you, no home, no family. Helen appeared with a broom in hand, glaring at Ethan and his friends. Ethan laughed. All right, but remember this, lady, your bakery won't be at peace. They walked out, but their threats lingered in the air, increasing Emily's desperation. After chasing away the young men, Helen sat next to Emily, her expression empathetic. But Emily only lowered her head, hugging her belly, murmuring, I don't know how to go on living. You must live, Emily, Helen said firmly. You're not just living for yourself, you're also living for that baby you carry. Don't let them win. But deep down, Emily felt everything was out of control. She didn't know how much more she could endure. Emily woke up from a night filled with nightmares. Helen's bakery, though small and cozy, no longer felt as safe as before. The hostile stares and malicious rumors in the neighborhood had eroded that peace. Emily, rest today. Don't go out, Helen said as she made bread dough. She had noticed Emily isolating herself more and more, always with a worried and fearful expression. I can't just stay still, Grandma. I have to do something to help you, Emily replied in a low voice, fiddling with a cloth. But inside, she was afraid of facing a world filled with scorn. Silly child, don't worry about me. First you need to take care of yourself, Helen said softly but firmly. However, Emily was determined. That afternoon, when Emily went out to buy some ingredients to help Helen, she ran into Laura, a vegetable seller at the market, known for being nosy. Well, Emily, you're still here, Laura said sarcastically, seeing Emily stand there awkwardly in front of her stall. I just want to buy some vegetables, Emily murmured, avoiding Laura's gaze. You still dare to show up here? I thought you'd already left the neighborhood, Laura continued disdainfully. Several people around began paying attention, their curious looks directed at Emily. I don't want to cause trouble. I just need to buy a few things, Emily replied, backing away as she tried to avoid the stares that cut through her like knives. Trouble? Don't you think you've already caused enough with that belly? You've disgraced the whole neighborhood, Laura snarled, provoking murmurs of agreement among some bystanders. Don't say that. I just want to live in peace, Emily said, her voice trembling. But her words only seemed to enrage Laura further. In peace? Someone like you wants peace? Girls who don't know how to behave have no right to ask for tranquility. Now we all have to bear the shame because of you. Laura shouted, drawing mocking laughter from the people there. Emily couldn't take it anymore. She turned and ran, leaving behind the laughter and cruel comments. Each step felt like she carried the weight of everyone's contempt. That night, while Emily was cleaning the bakery, the door suddenly burst open. 3 men walked in with threatening faces. Emily recognized one of them, Ethan, the same one who had intimidated her before. "Where's the old lady Helen?" Ethan asked, his voice cold. "She's not here," Emily answered, trying to remain calm. Ethan smiled maliciously. "Good, then we'll talk to you." He approached Emily with a dangerous look. "Do you really think you can live peacefully here? We already told you this place doesn't want you. Please, I just want to work." "I don't want any trouble," Emily pleaded, her tone desperate. "Trouble? You're the trouble. Since you arrived, this neighborhood talks about nothing but you. We lost customers because this bakery keeps you around," Ethan shouted, slamming his fist on the table, making Emily step back in fright. The other 2 men began knocking things off the counter onto the floor. The freshly baked bread fell, and ingredients were scattered everywhere. "Stop, please. Don't do this," Emily cried, tears in her eyes. But Ethan just laughed uproariously. "This is a lesson for you. Get out before things get worse." They left, leaving Emily in the middle of a mess. She sank to the floor, her hands trembling as she picked up pieces of broken bread, tears streaming down her face. When Helen returned, she was horrified to see the state of the bakery. "What happened here?" I can't stay here, Grandma," Emily said with a breaking voice. "All I do is cause trouble." Helen grasped Emily's shoulders, her eyes full of determination. "You're not going anywhere. We'll get through this together." But Emily knew that Helen, now older, was growing more tired, and Emily couldn't bear the feeling that she was a burden. 2 days later, Helen received a notice from the landlord. He warned that if she didn't pay the overdue rent within a week, she'd lose the bakery. Helen tried to hide her concern from Emily, but Emily could see the sadness in her eyes. "I'll leave, Grandma. Maybe if I'm not here, people will leave you alone," Emily said, tears threatening to fall. "You're not going anywhere, Emily," Helen exclaimed. "I've already told you. This is your home." But Emily knew her presence had ruined everything good Helen had. That night, when everything was quiet, Emily stared at the ceiling, her heart heavy with sorrow. "I have to go, for her sake," she thought, placing a hand on her belly, feeling the little being inside move. "I'm sorry, Hope, but I can't stay here forever." Early the next morning, Emily got up before dawn. She packed her few belongings in an old bag, looked at Helen, who was still sound asleep in a corner of the room, and tried to hold back her tears. She couldn't allow the old woman to keep suffering because of her. She wrote a short note and left it on the table. "Dear Grandma Helen, I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me, but I can't stay here and keep being a burden. I will look for another place to live, and I hope you won't have to deal with everyone's pressure anymore. I love you very much. Emily." Giving one last look around, Emily placed her hand on her belly. "Hope, we have to be strong, because nobody else will help us." She went out and closed the door behind her, leaving behind a space filled with silence. Emily wandered the streets, arriving at a cheap boarding house on the outskirts of the city, where nobody cared who she was. But with the little money she had, she could only afford a few days' stay. "Room number 3, don't bother me if you can't pay any more," said the proprietor, a middle-aged woman named Angela, tossing the key to Emily. The room was small, dark, and damp. Emily sat on the bed, tears in her eyes, recalling Helen's warmth and the bakery. Now it was just her and Hope. "We'll be okay," Emily whispered, though even she didn't believe her own words. On the first day at the boarding house, Emily went out to look for work. Every place she tried rejected her immediately. We're not hiring. You're too young. We don't want problems, were the same words that once again pierced Emily's heart. She knew that her growing belly made people judge and avoid her even more. When Emily returned, she noticed a group of children gathered near her door, pointing and laughing. "Look at her belly, it looks like a balloon," shouted one boy, provoking more laughter from the group. "She must be a bad person for her family to kick her out," added another child cruelly. "Stop it, you shouldn't say that," Emily tried to explain, but her words only made the children laugh harder at her powerlessness. That night, Emily huddled in the dark room, hugging her belly, trying to calm herself and hope. But the kids' mocking and insults echoed in her head like an endless nightmare. The next morning, Emily tried to leave early to avoid seeing anyone, but when she opened the door, Angela was already waiting with a cold expression. "You stole something from me, right?" Angela said loudly, her tone accusatory. "No. I didn't do anything," Emily backed away, terrified. "I'd never take anything from anyone." "Then why is money missing from my drawer ever since you got here?" Angela crossed her arms, her tone growing harsher. "I don't know. I swear it wasn't me." Emily shook her head, her voice cracking with indignation and fear. "Stop making things up. You have 24 hours to pay me or get out. I don't want thieves in my house," Angela shouted, drawing the attention of other boarders. Emily could only lower her head as tears fell down her cheeks. Angela's accusations made everyone whisper among themselves. Emily felt like the whole world was against her. That night, returning to her room, she found the door wide open. Inside, everything was in disarray, and her few belongings were scattered on the floor. "Is anyone here?" Emily asked, her voice trembling, but received no answer. Upon entering, she realized her little bag of money had disappeared. "No, this can't be happening," she murmured, tears welling up again. She ran to find Angela to report what had happened. But before she could say anything, Angela interrupted her. "You again. Don't blame anyone else. If something happened, it's your fault," Angela shouted, leaving Emily speechless, consumed by desperation. Emily returned to her room, knowing that nobody believed her, that nobody was on her side. In the cold, silent room, Emily hugged her belly and cried. "I'm sorry, Hope. I can't protect you. Where will we go now? What are we going to do?" But there was no answer. The only sound Emily could hear was the whistling wind through the cracks in the door, a reminder that she was completely alone. Early the next day, Emily left the room quietly, carrying her old bag with the few belongings she had left. The clink of keys echoed as she handed them to Angela, who didn't even look at her and just motioned for her to leave quickly. Emily lowered her head and left, feeling the cold stares of the other boarders on her back. She wandered through familiar streets, but it felt like every path rejected her. Hungry, exhausted, she leaned against a wall of old bricks, breathing with difficulty. A cold wind passed through her thin jacket, making her tremble. She reached an old market where some kind people had once given her leftover food, but nobody spared her a glance that day. Emily stared at the lit stalls. The smell of fresh bread made her empty stomach ache even more. She timidly approached a counter, summoning all her courage. "Excuse me, do you have any leftover food?" Emily asked softly, her throat raspy from cold and exhaustion. The woman behind the counter looked at her with scorn. "I don't have anything for you. Look somewhere else." Emily lowered her head, thanked her quietly, and left. Inside, she felt nothing but shame. She walked on, eyes fixed on the ground, avoiding the disapproving looks of others. In a small park, Emily sat on a bench, hugging her belly as tears quietly fell. "Hope, I'm sorry. What did I do wrong that we have to endure all this?" Suddenly, a group of children ran by, their laughter echoing in the air. One small boy stopped and stared at Emily's belly before shouting, "Look at that! She's super fat." The whole group burst into laughter. Another child threw a small stone at Emily, but she just lowered her head, enduring it in silence. Tears kept falling as her heart clenched under the cruelty of the surrounding world. Night fell, and Emily was still wandering aimlessly. She found a secluded spot between abandoned buildings and curled up there to protect herself from the cold wind. Though she tried to close her eyes, sleep never came. Her stomach rumbled, and the wind whistling through the cracks in the walls seemed to remind her that she was completely forsaken. Just when everything seemed most hopeless, Emily heard footsteps in the distance. At first, she ignored them, thinking it was just a passerby. But the footsteps approached and stopped right in front of her. "Emily!" She lifted her head, her eyes swollen from crying. In front of her stood Helen, her face filled with worry and fatigue. She carried a flashlight and an old umbrella. "Grandma Helen?" Emily murmured, her voice breaking with surprise. "Silly girl, you scared me so much. I've been looking everywhere for you." Helen knelt in front of Emily, her trembling hands touching the girl's face. "Why did you leave like that?" "I didn't want to keep being a burden to you." Emily broke into tears, tears flowing uncontrollably. Helen hugged her tightly, as though afraid of losing her again. "You don't understand, Emily. You're my family. I'll never leave you alone, no matter what happens." They hugged in the cold darkness, Emily's sobs blending with the sound of the drizzling rain. They both trembled, but in Helen's arms, Emily felt a warmth she thought she had lost forever. "I already told you, Emily, you don't have to worry. Together, we'll overcome anything," said Helen, her voice trembling with emotion. Emily nodded, her red, tear-filled eyes looking at Helen. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for leaving without saying anything." "Don't say anything else. All that matters is that you're safe." Helen held her more tightly, her trembling hands offering warmth and comfort. The next morning, the two returned to the little bakery. Though the problems remained, the place was now a real home for Emily. Helen cleaned the counter carefully, wiping away accumulated dust. Emily helped her bake, her small hands gradually adapting to daily tasks. "I'll help you with everything, and soon it'll all be fine," Emily said, a spark of hope in her eyes. Helen smiled, the first smile after days of exhaustion. "That's right, Emily. Everything will be fine. As long as we're together, nothing can bring us down." Over time, though inquisitive looks and rumors persisted in the neighborhood, Emily learned to ignore them. She focused on her work and caring for Hope, the tiny being growing inside her. Helen's little bakery once again filled the neighborhood with its familiar aroma, drawing back old customers. Emily took care of the counter, her eyes reflecting renewed faith in the future. "Thank you, Grandma Helen," said Emily, looking at the strong, kind old woman before her. "Without you, Hope and I wouldn't be here today." Helen gave her a gentle pat on the hand, her eyes filled with affection. "You are my family, Emily. Family always stays together, no matter what." And so, under that little roof, they lived a simple but peaceful life, supporting each other to overcome life's challenges. 13 years passed since that night Emily left her parents' home. She was now a strong, independent young woman. With Helen's help, she had overcome unimaginable hardships and managed to open a small cafe on the outskirts of London. The cafe was named Hope, in honor of her daughter, who was now the greatest pride of her life. Hope, a 13-year-old girl, was a reflection of a young Emily but with a gaze full of intelligence and confidence. Hope helped her mother at the cafe, serving customers with a radiant smile. Their life, though simple, was filled with love and happiness. One morning, as Emily was cleaning the counter, a customer came in, Fiona, a friend from Helen's youth, bringing several old photos. Fiona, a 60-year-old woman full of cheer and energy, often visited the cafe to share stories and show her support for Emily. Emily, I found these photos while organizing my house. Look how beautiful Helen was when she was young. Fiona placed the photos on the table, her eyes gleaming with nostalgia. Emily smiled and leaned over to look. Grandma Helen was the most wonderful person I ever knew. If it weren't for her, Hope and I wouldn't be here now. Hope ran from the counter, curious about the photos. Mom, this is Grandma Helen. I've never seen pictures of her when she was young. Yes, sweetheart. She did so much for me, and also for you, Emily replied warmly, stroking her daughter's hair. Her heart filled with gratitude for the woman who had rescued her in her darkest days. Suddenly, the cafe door chimed. Emily looked up and froze. An older, thin woman with completely white hair and a face marked by deep wrinkles walked in timidly. Her eyes showed weariness and doubt, but also something familiar that Emily couldn't ignore. Laura, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The woman nodded, tears filling her eyes. Yes, Emily. It's me, your mother. The atmosphere in the cafe immediately grew tense. Fiona, noticing the awkwardness, discreetly stepped back. Hope looked at her mother, then at the strange woman, with eyes full of curiosity but no understanding of what was happening. Emily took a deep breath, her voice turning cold. What are you doing here? After 13 years, you think you can walk into my life as if nothing happened? Laura lowered her head, speaking in a near whisper. I know I have no right, but I can't keep living with this remorse. I came to ask your forgiveness, Emily. Forgiveness? Emily let out a bitter laugh, though tears formed in her eyes. You threw me out on the street without mercy. You chose the family's honor over your own daughter, and now you're here asking for forgiveness? Do you think a few words can fix everything? Hope gently tugged on her mother's hand, her large eyes filled with confusion. Mom, what's going on? Who is she? Emily was silent for a moment, clenching her hands until her knuckles turned white. Hope, she's your grandmother. My grandmother? Hope exclaimed, surprised. She turned to Laura. Is it true? Are you my mom's mother? Laura sank to her knees, tears in her tired eyes as she looked at Hope. Yes, dear, I'm your mom's mother. And I was wrong. I abandoned your mom when she needed me the most, but I can't keep living without trying to make it right. Hope took a step back, looking at her mother with a puzzled, sad expression. Mom. Is this true? Why did she leave you alone? Emily leaned over, hugging Hope tightly. I'll explain it to you, but not now. Laura stood up, her hands trembling. Emily, I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to do anything to make amends. I can't change the past, but I can try to improve the present and the future. It won't be that easy, Emily replied, pain in her voice. 13 years isn't a short time. I started from zero. You weren't there when I needed you. Now, I don't know if there's anything you can do to change that. Fiona, who had been quietly watching, stepped forward and placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. Emily, your mother made a mistake, no doubt. But sometimes, forgiving isn't about helping others, it's about freeing ourselves. Emily looked at Fiona, then at Laura, overwhelmed by a mix of anger, pain, and vulnerability she didn't want to admit. Ms. Laura, Hope suddenly spoke up, her voice clear but firm. I don't know what you did, but I think if you're really sorry, you should prove it with actions, not words. Laura looked at Hope, her eyes lighting up with a small ray of hope. You're right. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix my mistakes. Laura knelt and took Emily's hands, tears streaming down her worn face. I have lived with regret these 13 years, she said between sobs. Your father, he fell ill after you left. He never stopped lamenting what happened, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. And now he's gone. Emily froze, feeling like a storm was raging in her mind. "Dad died?" she asked, her voice cracking. Why didn't you tell me? Why come looking for me now?" Laura held her daughter's hands firmly, her own trembling. "I didn't dare. I was afraid you wouldn't forgive me. But when he died, I realized I couldn't keep going like this. I couldn't lose you, too, Emily. You're all I have left." Emily pulled away, stepping back. "All you have left? You think a few words of remorse are enough? Dad threw me out, and you turned your back on me for 13 years. I survived alone, raising my daughter, and now you come asking for forgiveness because you feel lonely?" Laura couldn't answer. She just stayed on her knees, shoulders shaking as she cried. Hope, standing by her mother's side, watched with confusion and sadness in her eyes. "Mom," Hope said in a small voice, her throat tight. "I don't know what happened, but maybe she really does want to fix things." At that moment, the cafe door opened again. Helen entered, and upon seeing the scene, she said nothing. She calmly approached and spoke in a serene yet firm voice. "Emily," she said, placing a hand on her shoulder, "I think you should hear everything your mother has to say." "But how can I forgive her, Grandma? She threw me into hell, and now she expects me to just forget it all." Emily burst into tears, seeking comfort from Helen. Helen looked at her tenderly but firmly. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting everything, my dear. Forgiving means freeing yourself from the chains of resentment. Sometimes forgiveness is the greatest gift you can give yourself." Laura remained on her knees on the floor, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't dare ask you to forgive me right now, but please, give me a chance to make it right. I can't change the past, but I can try to make the present and the future better." Emily's emotions whirled inside her. "I need time," she finally muttered. Helen nodded. "Of course, Emily. You don't have to decide right now. But remember, no matter how broken a family is, it can still find a way to heal." Laura slowly stood, her eyes red but holding a tiny spark of hope. "Thank you, Emily. If you give me a chance, I'll do everything I can to show you I'm sincere." Over time, Emily kept her distance from Laura but didn't stop her from seeing hope. Laura began visiting the cafe regularly, sitting quietly in a corner, watching as Emily and Hope worked. Whenever Hope laughed, Laura smiled shyly, her eyes reflecting her feelings. One day, Hope took her mother's hand, her bright eyes seeming to pierce the barriers around Emily's heart. "Mom, I think Grandma really is sorry. Please, give her a chance. I don't want to see you sad forever." Emily looked at her daughter, feeling her words soften the walls she had built. Hope was her greatest motivation, and if this could bring her some peace, she was willing to try. Helen also helped to mediate, inviting Laura to stay for dinner or chat after work. "Helen," Laura said one evening while Emily was cleaning. "I know I hurt Emily deeply, but I think with patience and honesty, I can have a chance to repair the damage." Laura nodded. Her voice was husky with emotion. "I'll never give up. Emily is my daughter, and I'll do whatever it takes for her to know how much I love her." Weeks later, Emily decided to sit down and talk with Laura. The conversation took place in the cafe's small kitchen, after Hope had gone to bed and Helen gave them space. "Mom," Emily began, her voice still cold but not as sharp. "I need to know why. Why did you turn your back on me when I needed you most?" Laura lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. "I was afraid, Emily. Your father and I were terrified of everyone's judgment. We lived our whole lives protecting the family honor, and when it happened, we didn't know how to face it. But we were wrong, we were completely wrong." Emily stayed silent, letting Laura continue. "After you left, your father never smiled again. He lived consumed by regret, but his pride was too big to admit it. He used to sit by the window, looking outside, as if waiting for you to come back." "Then why didn't you look for me?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. He thought you'd never forgive him, and I believed it, too. But when he died, I realized I couldn't keep living that way. I couldn't lose you as well, Laura said, tears falling down her face. Emily was quiet, recalling the difficult years she spent alone under the rain, with no one to care for her. But she also knew that no matter how consumed she was by anger and pain, she couldn't change the past. Mom, she finally said, her voice breaking. I can't forget what happened, but I'll try to forgive, for Hope, for Grandma Helen, and for myself. Laura broke into sobs and hugged Emily. Thank you, Emily. I won't disappoint you. From that day on, Laura began helping at the cafe, slowly rebuilding her relationship with Emily. Though barriers remained, they worked together to overcome them. Hope, with her pure smile and innocent questions, became the strongest bridge between them. A few months later, on a beautiful morning, the cafe named Hope held a small event to thank those who had supported them. Helen, Laura, Emily, and Hope stood together, their faces reflecting happiness and gratitude. In her speech, Emily said, "Life can be full of difficulties, but if we don't give up, we will always find hope. I'm grateful to Grandma Helen, who rescued me in my darkest days, and I'm grateful to my mother for not giving up and seeking a second chance." Laura, tears in her eyes, took Emily's hand. "I'm so proud of you, Emily. You're the strongest woman I've ever known." The event ended in laughter and warmth. Under the small roof of the Hope Cafe, the old wounds began to heal. Emily, Laura, Helen, and Hope found an imperfect family but one filled with love. Emily's story left a profound lesson about forgiveness and the power of love. Forgiving is not only about letting others go free, it's also about healing our own soul. In the midst of suffering and injustice, kind acts like Helen's can ignite a light in even the coldest hearts, guiding the way through the darkness. Life isn't perfect, but love and sincerity can heal even the deepest wounds. Remember, even on the darkest days, there's always a light of hope waiting for you at the end. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue bringing stories almost every day. We're very grateful for your support. See you soon. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. Write your thoughts about it in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, tell me, and share this video with your friends and loved ones. This motivates us to continue working on new stories every day. Do not miss the next amazing story that is about to appear on your screen. We are very grateful to you for being with us. In the description under this video you can open the catalog of all the stories. See you there.